Here's the paradox of boundaries. You think if you set a boundary that you're risking having people leave you. Like, if you're not a doormat, who would even stay around for that? But the truth is, it's a lack of boundaries that causes you to be isolated. This was a revelation to me, and I want to share with you the 4th video in my 4-part series on isolation and loneliness. These videos were so popular. They became the basis for a mini course that I put out that year, and then I expanded it last year into my Connection Boot Camp, and so many people are taking that. That is like a whole 30-day course that gives you a video and a worksheet every day. And if you're interested, you can check it out on my website, crappychildhoodfairy.com, or in the links down below. But I thought that I might remake this series. But this video, just exactly as it is still so true. I'm just sharing it as is, from me to you. Why a lack of boundaries keeps you isolated.
Have you ever been at home and you hear the doorbell and you're pretty sure it's somebody selling something or giving out literature, and instead of answering the door, you hide like on the floor, whispering so they don't know you're there? Have you done this? This is a form of isolating because we don't trust ourselves to have boundaries. And that's the topic of this video in my series on isolation. Isolation is a totally common symptom of childhood PTSD, and a lack of boundaries is a big reason why we get isolated. Now, I know that when I hid on the floor of my kitchen, and I dragged my kids into this too, by the way, we were totally laughing really quietly. And in the scheme of things, this is pretty unimportant in terms of causing isolation in my life. But a lot of us, when we're isolating, we do the same thing around important things. We ignore texts from friends. We leave early at events where there's likely to be conversation. Or when a friend calls asking if you can give them a ride, you pretend you never got the message. Do you ever do this? Now, I know there are sometimes good self-protecting reasons to just avoid facing certain people. They're dangerous. They've become a total nuisance, and you don't have time right now to face them and deal with disappointing them. But I'm talking about the way that we sometimes choose to isolate, even from people we care about, even from opportunities for work or fun that we used to crave in our lives. And the reason we do it in that moment may seem like a good idea, but when you stand back, it's because the demands on you in that relationship or that work project or that dinner party could, in your mind, go out of control. And a lot of us fear being sucked in or overwhelmed or stuck in a situation where you're miserable. But if you look at it, it would be really hard for somebody else to actually trap you in a situation where you didn't want to be. Being literally trapped in a bad situation was something that used to happen to me when I was a kid, and then I've been physically attacked and held at gunpoint a couple of times. But other than that, I actually had a choice about where I was, who I hung out with, and what I said yes to. And so all the times where I felt pushed or coerced or trapped or miserably obligated were really me not having the inner strength to say no. It was me being afraid what people think of me, or me going on a long path of people-pleasing, a little here, a little there, until I was deeply embedded in some situation I actually resented. I said yes so many times because I couldn't deal with saying no that I didn't even remember how I got there. It begins to seem like other people are doing this to you. So the paradox of learning to say no to people, not through ignoring them, but through responding with a real communicated no, is that it frees us to stay connected. And when we're confident that we can give something a try, we could attend a meeting, we could go on a date or take on a project, and you know that you can still say no the next time or even in the middle of it. When you know that, you absolutely have freedom. When you are in charge of when you say yes and no, isolation is not necessary anymore. You can choose solitude at times, which is healthy and necessary, but you don't have to avoid people altogether. It's okay to say no. It's called boundaries, and people respect you for having boundaries. We all prefer to connect with people who take care of themselves, who are not secretly resentful that they've said yes to us. It doesn't do us a favor, and it doesn't do them a favor. Now, here's a secret about boundaries. They go two ways. A boundary is what you say no to, but it's also saying yes to things that are right for you to say yes to. So let's call the yes ones responsibility boundaries. When a father doesn't support his kids financially, he's breaking a responsibility boundary. And when someone says they'll pick you up at 8 a.m. and they never show up or call, they just broke a responsibility boundary. And notice that the father who doesn't pay, the friend who doesn't show up at your house, they are isolating too. And we can isolate by avoiding saying no, and we can isolate by avoiding saying yes. So childhood PTSD can really do a number on us in our capacity to say yes and no at the right times. Now that discernment begins to heal when we take positive steps toward healing and we get out of the shadows of isolation. And I mean, watch out. If you stay isolated over the years, it will start to bring out the worst in you. It does that to everybody. So recovery means learning this discernment. When you know your own mind, and you can say yes or no politely or really fiercely if necessary, your urge to isolate will get smaller and smaller. And you'll be amazed when you're expressing yourself on these day-to-day things, saying yes and no, how much your life fills up with good people and real connections. If you've got stories about breaking out of isolation or setting boundaries, tell us about them in the comments section.